All right, so we are now recording. Let me go back. All right, thanks for joining us for this Lunch and Learn today. Today we want to talk about using priming and visual support strategies to support engagement. My name is Joseph Tate. I'm one of the LaSard facilitators in the New Orleans area. So I'm happy to be here with all of you today. Just a quick note about LaSard. We are the Louisiana Autism Spectrum and Related Disabilities Project. We are embedded in schools and districts all across the state. We have people in the South area, we have people in Central and West Louisiana, and we have a team in the North. So we are available all over the state to support schools and teachers. Also want to just direct your attention quickly to our website, lasard.org. There are a lot of neat resources on there that you can use for teachers and for parents. We have an Ask LaSard feature where at any time you can reach out to a LaSard facilitator with questions around student support. We also have some online resources, a lot of templates that you can download. Some of the templates you'll actually see today in our presentation. So definitely look at our website if you haven't done that yet. There's lots of neat stuff on there for you. All right, so today we want to talk about priming and visuals. So we want to understand the importance of using priming strategies for students. And we also want to explore how visual support strategies are going to help increase student engagement and motivation. So these two things kind of go hand in hand, priming and the use of visuals. All right, so we're going to start just quickly by defining priming. We know that priming is exposure to information or activities that a student is likely to find difficult. This is just one example right here. This is a change alert. A student's schedule is going to change. You're going to let them know in advance that something's going to be different today. That is a form of priming, and we're going to get into some more examples as we go throughout the presentation. So when we use priming, we know that it can help the student anticipate and prepare for what is coming. We also know that it helps reduce anxiety and it makes it more likely that the learner is going to be successful with the task or activity. So again, there's two examples of priming down here. This first one, again, is that change alert. Instead of PE, we will go to art. The student might really like PE, but today PE had to be canceled for whatever reason, so you're going to have art class instead. You can use a simple template like this to prime that student, let them know there's going to be a change in the schedule. This other example is just, it is a schedule. It's the daily schedule. You can start in the morning by letting the student know what their day is going to look like, and that's a form of priming. Some strategies we can use when we prime. We know that priming is most effective when it's built into the student's daily routine. So this is something you do want to do every day, whether it's in the morning, whether it's before an activity. You want to think about all the ways and times you might need to prime a student throughout the day. You can review their schedule at the beginning of the day, particularly noting any changes that are going to occur that day. You can prime right before an activity. That gives you a chance to review the steps of an activity so the student knows what to expect during that lesson or activity. You can use priming to review rules and expectations with the student. You can use priming to review tools and strategies for self-management. You can use it to help prepare a student for an upcoming test. And you can use it to prepare a student for potential questions and responses before class. For example, say you are working with a student in an inclusion setting. You know the lesson ahead of time. You know that the gen ed teacher is going to ask some questions. You want your student to be able to respond. You can prime your student on those questions beforehand and have a chance to formulate that response before going into class or before the lesson starts. This is an example of priming with some visual supports. This is a pre-K example right here. This teacher just wanted students to know in advance what centers were going to be open that day and what centers were going to be closed. So a really easy example of priming using visuals. This is another example. This is just a LEAP testing schedule. We know that during LEAP, school schedules are usually completely different than they are on a regular day. So this is just a quick visual to help that student see that their schedule is going to look different today because they're taking the LEAP test, or someone else in the school is taking the LEAP test. So the schedule is different. Here's a quick video of a schedule change. This teacher is going to prime the student on this schedule change. This video is a little quiet, so you might need to turn your volume up just a little bit to hear this.
I don't have any sound, Joseph.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. So we'll skip that video, but just note that in this video, the teacher does really point out what's going to be different about that student's day based on the schedule, who's there, who's not there, and what changes are going to occur. And as we go through the presentation, we're going to look at a lot more visual examples of what that can look like. All right. So one way to really help prime students is to use visual supports throughout the day. Visual supports and priming really go hand in hand. They help you show the student an example of what their day is going to look like, what might be different. So really utilizing visual supports as you think about priming is something that's really going to help your students. So visual supports are any materials that illustrate important information, facilitate transitions, convey expectations, and provide understanding and predictability. When we think about visual supports, there are three different areas that we typically think about. Visual boundaries, so actually marking off space, whether it's space in a room, space on an activity or a worksheet, just actually creating a visual boundary for a student. The other thing we think about is visual schedules. We're going to talk a little bit about visual schedules today, but we're also going to have another webinar next month all about visual schedules. So we hope you'll join us for that one too. And then we also think about visual cues. So most of what we're going to talk about today is going to be those visual cues and how those help support priming throughout your day. So just a quick note about visual schedules. We know that a visual schedule is a tool that provides a child with information about a sequence of events that's going to occur. Here's a quick example of a visual schedule. This is their afternoon schedule. It just lists exactly what they're going to do that day. So the student sees it in advance. As they go, you can check it off. The student knows it's done and that it's time to move on to the next activity. This is for a little older student. This is a visual schedule of what their ELA class is going to look like. So all the steps that they need to take in that ELA class are broken down on this visual schedule. Again, do an activity, check it off. They know it's time to move on to the next one. So they have an idea of how that class is going to flow, how it's going to look for them as they go throughout that class session. Here's an example of a first then schedule that students can use. Students know that first they need to complete one thing, then they can move on to the next thing, whether that's another activity, whether that's a reinforcer. This just helps you prime a student to know what's happening first, what's happening next. So here's a few different examples of some first then schedules right here. We also have a lot of templates for first then schedules on our Lassard website. All right, now moving on to visual cues. Visual cues are concrete objects, pictures, symbols, or written words that provide a person with information about how to do a routine, an activity, a behavior, or a skill. So we're going to look at a few different types of visual cues today that can help you prime students. The first one is transition cues. We know that especially for a lot of our students with autism spectrum disorder, transitions can be difficult. So the more you can prime a student before a transition, the more likely they are to engage in that transition and have a successful transition. So transition cues help students know specific start and end times. And transition cues can be easily paired with the schedule to help students pace their work. Here are some examples of visual transition cues. This first one on the left, the stop, almost done, go, that just lets you know, the student know how they're moving through that activity, when it's time to start, when it's time to maybe, to start thinking about cleaning up, when it's time to stop and move on to another activity. There's also an example of a visual timer up here. And the student can just watch that time, click down on this clock. The clock changes color as the time ticks down, and that gives the student a visual that it's about time to transition. And then this last one down here is a 5-minute warning. A lot of times we can say 5 minutes, but a lot of our students don't really grasp that concept of just how much time that is. So with this 5-minute warning, you can track each minute as it ticks down by putting a check mark or a token under each number until you get to 1, and then you're all done, time to transition to a new activity. So those are some visual examples of transition cues that you can use to help prime your students. All right. We also like to talk about choice making when it relates to priming. We know that choice making is a really effective way to build buy-in and engagement with students. And it also gives them that, it helps prime them. They know what's going to happen first, what they might have to do later. So just a quick note about choice making. We know that it can reduce or prevent challenging behaviors. We know that choice making promotes independence. It increases motivation. Choice making can also help prevent learned helplessness, and it can increase buy-in and attention to task. When a student feels like they have an option in what they're doing, that they're more likely to complete that activity or that lesson. Some quick strategies for choice making. You can give a student a choice of where to work or flexible seating, give them a choice of materials, give them a choice of the process for completing the work, give them a choice of a partner to work with, or give them a choice of the order for completing their work. And there are a lot of visual strategies that we can use to really aid with choice making. So we're going to look at some of those visual strategies now. Here's just a quick choice board for centers. What center do you choose? The student has to choose one. So they'll choose one. They might choose their preferred one first and then save a less preferred one for later. But they're making a choice as to what they do, how they do it, when they do it. Here are some more visual choice board activities. In this first one, the student is picking an activity from a menu. In the second one, the student is also picking an activity. This is a recess choice board, so more preferred activities, but again, you still want the student to have choice in which activity they complete. More choice board activities. This is just a picture of different work tasks that the student can do in class. And then this other one is a choice board for I'm done, now what? So the student finishes their work, they have time to do another activity, they have to select an activity on this list. So this is another option for how to help students make choices, particularly when it's some less structured time in your class once they're done with their work. All right, another way we use visual supports is with behavior cues. Behavior cues can remind the individual of the rules or expectations you expect him or her to follow. And with behavior cues, students will be successful when teachers provide clear expectations that are visual, taught, and referenced throughout the day. So here are some visual examples of behavior cues. On the left, you see one for voice level, and this teacher just used characters from Encanto and just how loud or quiet they are in the movie. It gives students a visual of how loud or how soft they need to be speaking throughout their day. You point to the 1, the 2, or the 3, depending on the activity and how you want that student to respond. The one on the right is more center examples. This is a looks like, sounds like card, which we actually have this template on our website as well. So this just gives the student a visual of what staying in a center looks like and what staying in a center sounds like. You can also do contingency mapping with students using visuals. This is when you take a situation or activity and you show the student the desired behavior and then what positive outcome might come from that behavior. You also show the student what that undesired behavior might look like and what a natural consequence of not demonstrating that desired behavior might be. So again, contingency mapping is a way to use visuals to help support behavior. And then we also use visuals when we talk about social cues. Social cues help individuals understand social norms and expectations when interacting with another person. And social cues teach individuals a set of social skills to help them navigate through a difficult social situation and appropriate responses. So here are some visual examples of social cues. This first one, everyone has a space bubble around them. This is your personal space. This helps the student visualize where they stand in relation to their peers in the space that they're in. We also have a my turn, your turn visual. This is just a pipe cleaner with a bead on it that the students move back and forth. It's my turn to talk, or it's my turn to do the activity. I'm finished. All right, I'm going to move it to your turn. Now you take over with the conversation or the activity. And then this one on the bottom is just an example of an appropriate interaction and an inappropriate interaction. You don't kiss your friends in class, you give them a high five. So lots of ways to use visuals to help with social interaction. Here are some more examples of social interaction visuals. This first one, actually using real pictures of the student. You say, excuse me, to get in line. This is more examples the student can use. These are scripted examples of ways that a student can say, excuse me, I need this, or I need that. So lots of ways to support social cues, social interaction using visuals. Some more examples of social interaction visuals. This is just a quick script for greetings. How do you greet a peer? You smile, you use your friendly voice, look at the person, say hi, call the person by name. This other example on the far right, the student actually has a chance to write out what they might want to say or what they're thinking they need to say to a student based on the different situations that are listed on the cards. So lots of ways to support social interaction using visuals. All right. And then we also want to talk about positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is delivered after a behavior and increases the likelihood that the behavior will happen again. And there are lots of ways that we can use visuals to support positive reinforcement throughout your day. When do we use reinforcement? We use it whenever we're teaching a new skill. We use it when we're teaching a replacement behavior for a challenging behavior. And we use it to increase on-task or other appropriate behaviors. So some quick examples of reinforcers, again, thinking about student choice and choice making. This is a choice board for reinforcers. So these are all preferred items for a student. The student picks an item before they start their work, and they know that they're working for that particular item once they complete a task or an activity. This is an example of a token economy, another excellent visual tool to use when you're thinking about positive reinforcement. It just provides that positive reinforcement to the student by giving them tokens for completing tasks or behaving in desired ways. The student selects that item from their choice board. You put that in the I'm working for box. And then as the student works, they earn stickers or stars in the smaller boxes. Once they've gotten all their stickers or stars, then they've earned their reinforcer that they selected when they made a choice earlier. Here are some more examples of token economies and token boards. You can see from some of these examples, they can be super easy. You don't have to spend a lot of time making them. You can write it out in class right there in front of the student. You could write it on top of their worksheet if you needed to, or whatever activity they're working on. So just lots of examples of token boards and how students can use their choices that they make for reinforcers to work in class and kind of guide their appropriate responses as they go. All right, so we covered a lot of information in a really short time today, but today we hope that you learned some new things. We discussed the importance of using priming strategies with students to increase predictability and decrease anxiety. And we also explored how a variety of visual cues and visual supports can increase student engagement and motivation. And again, I want to remind you that a lot of these visual support strategies can be found on our LaSARD website under that resources tab. If you saw something that you liked and might want to try with a student, definitely visit our website and look through some of those templates, and feel free to download and use the ones that you might like to use. All right, here's my contact information. If you would like more information on anything we talked about today, the use of visuals and how they support priming in class, you can reach out to me. My email address is here. You can also visit our LaSARD website or our LaSARD Facebook and Instagram pages, and there are links there that can also help you get in contact with a LaSARD facilitator. And then finally, before we go, we do ask that you scan this QR code to your phone so that you can take a quick survey about our webinar today. This just helps us improve our practices, and so we can continuously do better. It should only take you, a few minutes to complete. It's just a few simple questions about the content that was presented today. So definitely, please take our survey if you have a minute.
I put a link in the chat in case anyone has trouble scanning.
All right, thank you. All right, so that is all we have for today. I definitely hope that you're able to take back some of these strategies and use some visual supports with your students in class. And we do hope you'll join us for our Lunch and Learn next month. You can find that link coming out soon on our Facebook and our Instagram page. So definitely look there. We're always posting new information there about webinars and other things. So it's definitely worth taking a look at those sites as well. Thanks for joining us today. We'll take a few minutes to respond to some questions in the chat, but that is all we have for today. So thank you. I hope you have a great weekend.